Hello and welcome to this fifth portion of our video series on D squared, becoming a devoted follower of Christ. As you remember, we now know what D squared means. D squared means we are always being discipled by someone or something, and we are always discipling someone, and we're always influencing and impacting their lives. And now as we've kind of gotten to this point in our journey of understanding what discipleship and spiritual formation and all those things are about, now we've got to a point where we have to ask a question: what does a disciple look like? What are the characteristics and qualities of a disciple? Well, in this particular chapter in our D squared book, we go into some really particular things about what is found in Scripture as descriptors, as characteristics of what a disciple of Christ looks like. There are 10 ways in which we see that found throughout Scripture. They're not difficult. They're pretty common sense sort of things. But what I want to do is not go all through each one of those, but I want to encourage you to dig in as an individual or as a group, however you're doing this study, to go and look at those 10 ways that describe a profile of a disciple of Christ. From things of being committed to obedience, to being a giver, to being committed to spiritual growth. All those things are part of those 10 aspects of a profile of a disciple of Christ. From that profile, we here at Fairfax began to develop basically a list of expectations. Phil just said it. He used the word expectations. Yes, I did. Expectations. For some reason, we've kind of tried to disassociate the idea of having expectations from being a Christian. We've felt it's too hard. We don't want to place that on people. But here's the thing. We didn't do it. It's in and throughout all of Scripture that there are a set of expectations that are in there that help us not become people that are checklist Christians, as we've already talked about, but more so to develop intimacy with God. These are things that are expected in order to develop that relationship. As a matter of fact, there are expectations in all our homes and in all our relationships, and we do it sometimes unknowingly. We have these set of expectations that in order to be a part of this family, in order to be a part of this relationship, they're there. And that's what we sometimes unknowingly, sometimes knowingly agree upon. But for this developing intimacy with Christ, there are these expectations that are there. God expects us to have a desire to learn more about Him. He expects us to have a desire to dig deeper into disciplines that help us grow deeper with Him. There's an expectation that we're going to be committed to Him, obedient to Him, that we're going to be committed to prayer. All those sorts of things are a part of that, not only profile of a disciple of Christ, but expectations of disciples of Christ. Go into that. Spend some time. Look through all the Scriptures that are there and understand why those are even in the Bible and what their intention and purpose is, right? So now as we go from there, I want to spend a little time of asking the question, how do we know we're growing spiritually? How do we know? What are the signs of spiritual growth? Well, throughout Scripture, the New Testament in particular, one of the key descriptors of growth comes in plant life, okay? It comes in knowing that when a particular plant or tree grows, from it, there's a fruit that's born. Okay? There's the roots that go down into the ground, there's the shoot that comes up out of the ground, there's the leaves and the branches, but ultimately those plants or those trees produce some sort of fruit. Jesus multiple times said, "You'll know them by their fruit," right? And so part of our understanding of how we know if we're growing spiritually is that we have an increasing measure of the spiritual fruits growing off of our lives. And people see it, they can take from it, they can eat from it, they can themselves grow from it. What are the fruit of the Spirit? I think we know these. Paul made them very clear to us. The fruit of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. When we see these fruit growing in increasing measure in our life, and when others see these fruit growing in increasing measure in our lives, we know, we can be confident that we're growing spiritually. Now, sometimes it's very hard for us to see it ourselves. That's why it's so important to have a deeper group of people around us, where we have a deeper spiritual intimacy with them, who are able to challenge us and look to us and say, Phil, man, you're more loving. You're more loving this year than you were last year, and here's why. Your kindness has grown, and here's why. But they also have to have the ability and the accountability to say, Phil, you are not being gentle. Your words and your actions are harsh, and they're not like Christ. They're not saying that because they're better than me. They're saying that because they're like me. They struggle just like me, and they want to be on that journey with me toward becoming an image of Jesus Christ. So I want to tell you a story about a Native American grandfather helping his grandson know about life and how to approach it. He tells his grandson, you see, grandson, there are two dogs at war within us at all times. There's the good dog. And the good dog is that part of us that always wants to do what is right. We know it knows what is right and wants to live by it. It is that side of us that sees others before they see themselves. It looks to doing good to others and to help others when they're in need. It is that good side of us. But then there's the bad dog in us. And that bad dog is always that part of us that wants to do what is best for me, even at the cost of other people's, and many times knowing that it's at the cost of other people. It will do whatever it takes to get what it wants and to accomplish what they want in life. And as he's telling the grandson this story, he's saying these two dogs are always warring against one another, vying for the bigger position in a person's life. And when the grandfather's telling this grandson this story, the grandson asks him, which one wins the fight, grandfather? At that moment, the grandfather stops for a moment and he thinks and he says, the one we feed the most. And I want you to hear that, because that's a part of our spiritual growth. Inside of us, these fruit that I just mentioned that Paul brings out, before he speaks about the fruit of the Spirit, he talks about the works of the flesh. And he's talking about this constant battle within us for good or for evil. In Romans, he even says, I know the good that I ought to do, and I want to do it, but I keep on doing the things that I don't want to do. And that there's this battle that's going on within us and raging there at all times. And like the grandfather told the grandson, the way we know we'll continue to grow is to feed the right dog. As long as we feed that bad dog, it will grow and grow and grow, and that good dog will still be there trying to fight, but it will be malnourished and it will not be able to win. But the more we feed that good dog, and the less we feed the bad dog, the more we will grow and bear fruit so that others will see Christ within us. I hope this has been helpful for you today, not only to go back and look, what is the profile of a disciple of Christ? What are the expectations that God has laid out before us in entering this intimate relationship with Him? But also, how do we know we're growing? Well, we're bearing more and more fruit of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. So now, it's our job to not only know what it means to be a disciple and the commitment we have to give toward it, but also which dog are we going to feed in order to grow in the fruit of the Spirit so that God is glorified and honored in our lives. Take some time, go back through this chapter. There's a lot of verses all throughout it. Spend time, dig deeply into them, and then begin to write out a plan for spiritual growth based on the desire to grow in each of the fruit of the Spirit. When we do that, when we are more intentional about it, growth will begin to happen. Have a blessed week, a blessed day, and may God give you the growth that you're looking for.